Michael Gates, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you for having me.
What about your experience and your background makes you qualified to be California's next Attorney General?
So I've lived in California nearly my entire life since I was 7 years old, married with 5 beautiful children, 4 grandchildren. Love California, love Huntington Beach, absolutely looking forward to this opportunity to run for Attorney General. I believe right now there's a real meaningful opportunity to rescue California. 65% of respondents to polls say that California is headed in the wrong direction. So California needs rescuing, and I think I'm the person to do that. To your question about my experience, I actually am a real lawyer, unlike our current Attorney General who went to law school, but he's been acting as a career politician. I've tried many multi-million-dollar cases in court at trial. I've argued a number of appeals, both in federal court, the Ninth Circuit, but also state court. I've argued in various federal district courts throughout the country, Washington State, California, Washington, D.C. And then, in addition to that, I'm actually certified as a member of the United States Supreme Court. So if called upon to argue a case before the Supreme Court tomorrow, I could fly back to DC and do so. So just very, very blessed with a great legal career. I've practiced in elections law, election integrity. I've practiced in California constitutional law, U.S. constitutional law, First Amendment. I even had a Second Amendment case. I've done parental rights litigation. I've done defensive police litigation. For years, I've taken cases to trial defending our police officers, both in Huntington Beach and for the Orange County Sheriff's Department. So while our current Attorney General has spent his days in the halls of the legislature, I have spent my days in court trying cases defending Huntington Beach residents, defending everyday Californians. And so I think I'm perfectly suited, perfectly situated to actually become the next Attorney General.
Yeah, you're noting a clear difference in terms of your experience with the Attorney General, but what would you do differently if elected Attorney General than Rob Bonta is doing right now?
Probably everything. I mean, he's not enforcing criminal laws. California is considered one of the most dangerous states to live in. FBI data shows that California is ranked 6th highest in violent crime in the nation. And then if you look at the recent 2026 Consumer Affairs report that just came out, California is ranked 2nd highest in crime. It's the 2nd most dangerous state to live in. And that's because Rob Bonta is not enforcing criminal laws. He does not take fighting crime seriously. He's now touting, because it's an election year, he's now touting that crimes have dropped. That's not true. Like I said, the 2026 Consumer Affairs report rates California, or ranks California, as the 2nd most dangerous state to live in. Whereas if you look at my work in Huntington Beach, I was the top prosecutor there. I did prosecuting of federal crimes with the Department of Justice last year. But before that, when I was 10 years as city attorney, I was the top prosecutor there. And with the same laws that are available to Rob Bonta on the books, the same state criminal laws available to him, I was tough on crime, no excuses, no exceptions. And because of that, Huntington Beach is ranked in the top 10 safest cities in the entire state of California out of nearly 500 cities in the state. So while Rob Bonta's state of California is one of the most dangerous states to live in the country, my city of Huntington Beach, one of the safest cities to live in the entire state. So we're talking fighting crime on day one, fighting corruption, the waste, fraud, and abuse. People will go to jail.
Sorry, if I could just, on crime though, for people who, from your perspective, what tools is California Attorney General Rob Bonta not using? Only because you note Huntington Beach, that's a local jurisdiction.
Right.
Local jurisdiction is typically tasked with solving crimes that happen at the local level. What could the Attorney General actually do in these cases?
So in Huntington Beach, we actually enforce state criminal laws in Huntington Beach, and we actually got a great result. We're the 23rd largest city in the state of California out of nearly 500. So it's a big city with 200,000 residents and 15 million visitors a year. But it's the state criminal laws available to him. All the quality of life crimes. If he actually had a policy throughout the state of California that we were going to be tough on crime, we could reduce the homeless population on the street. We could actually get them up off of the street into county level services and oftentimes back home, which is what we did in Huntington Beach as well. Just enforcing the laws, the criminal laws that are on the books. He knows he's not doing it. He has made statements publicly about basically how he coddles criminals. He says that they only act out because they are victims of their own circumstance. Well, regardless of their circumstance, they need to be held accountable. And so he is soft on crime. He lets, prisoners out of jail early. His prosecutors go into court and do not ask for maximum sentences. They do not prosecute aggressively. When I'm Attorney General, I will have purview over all 58 district attorneys throughout the state of California, all 58 sheriff's departments throughout the state of California. And when I'm the Attorney General, we are going to be tough on crime. We're going to enforce Prop 36, which Rob Bonta is not doing. And I'm going to go further than that. When I'm the Attorney General, I'm actually going to advocate and promote that there's a new proposition placed on the 2028 ballot that actually repeals Prop 47 and 57 and reverses AB 109. We have got to get back to a law and order state. We have been lawless in California under Rob Bonta for the past 5 years. He is not enforcing the laws. Perfect example is Prop 36. He is not enforcing Prop 36. We are going to be tough on crime. We are going to be tough on the law. We are going to hold people accountable.
Part of what, initiated a lot of California's criminal justice laws, though, is the prison overcrowding concern that the Supreme Court flagged. And since then, California has been trying to ways to, lessen that population. Your response to that, how would you balance, this court order essentially that California is under and this tough on crime stance that you'd like to take?
Right, so we've got to reverse course because, as I said, California is one of the most dangerous states to live in. The 2026 study from the Consumer Affairs literally ranks it as the second most dangerous state in the nation. We do not have to live like that. We, as the Attorney General's office, under my leadership, we are going to be tough on crime regardless. It's going to be up to the legislature to make sure that they provide enough funding to increase our prison capacity, increase our jails capacity. They have got to do their job too to help make California safe, but I'm not going to surrender or abdicate my responsibilities. My responsibility is to be tough on crime and to keep people safe. When we are safe in California, when we increase public safety and reduce crime, we reduce suffering in California, we have fewer victims in California, and frankly, when you're tough on crime, it's a deterrent. You have fewer criminals in California. And so there is no exception, or no excuse rather, to have lawlessness in California and let crime run rampant. There are people suffering in our neighborhoods right here in California right now. And so we have got to be tough on law. And as Attorney General, I am going to beat that toughness on the law. We're going to make neighborhoods safe again. And court orders are court orders, but we are going to do our job as the Attorney General. I'm the top cop as the Attorney General. I am the one who's ultimately responsible for public safety. I have to do my job. I can't surrender my job or relinquish my responsibilities, my duties under the California Constitution, because the legislature has not done their job.
You were saying about fraud and waste, differentiating yourself between Rob Bonta and yourself. How would you do things differently there?
So we've seen nearly $425 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse amassed over the past 5 years, notably the exact same time that Rob Bonta has been in office. You probably saw the state auditor's report that came out a few weeks ago that said that we actually didn't need Nick Shirley to expose the fraud in California because there were complaints already lodged with state level officials. So Governor Newsom and Rob Bonta already knew about the waste, fraud, and abuse for years prior to Nick Shirley exposing it, and they deliberately chose to do nothing about it. Rob Bonta has done nothing to look into these investigations, this $425 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse. He did have a press conference a couple months ago noting that he found 14 fraudulent hospice locations in the state of California. 14, that's a day late and a dollar short. We know that there are over 800 throughout the state of California, and they came into being over the past 5 years while he was in office. He heard about them and chose to do nothing about them until now it's an election year. And so suddenly he's doing something and he found 14. Again, that's a day late and a dollar short. He's not serious. I say he's not a real lawyer. He's allowing this lawlessness to happen. He's a politician. The only reason we're seeing now that he might be out there touting, being tough on the law, it's just pure politics. Where has he been the past 4 years? We haven't seen press conferences like this for 4 years. And now suddenly, because it's an election year, he's holding all of these press conferences and he's touting and taking these victory laps over these tiny little, they aren't even victories. He found 14 fraudulent hospice locations in the state when we know there are over 800, over 440 just in LA County alone. So he's not doing his job. He's failed as our Attorney General, and frankly, that's why I'm running.
And in terms of the Attorney General, Rob Bonta specifically, he's known for filing these lawsuits against the Trump administration, money and power that the legislature has given him. Would those lawsuits stop under Attorney General Michael Gates? What happens with that?
So what we're not going to engage in is we're not going to engage in political or politically charged weaponization of the department, which is what we're seeing. Rob Bonta is literally out there taking victory laps saying 78 lawsuits in 78 weeks. I mean, that's absolutely 78 lawsuits against the Trump administration in 78 weeks. That's absolutely ridiculous. If there is some merit to challenging the federal government over something, that's one thing. And so I'm going to look at those lawsuits. But what Rob Bonta is not telling you is that a lot of the reason that the federal government is withholding funding from a lot of these programs, and that's why Rob Bonta is suing, the reason the federal government is withholding money from these programs from the state of California is because California is not complying with federal law. And it's Rob Bonta's responsibility to make sure that California is complying with federal law. So he is not doing his job to make sure that California is complying with all federal laws. That's step one. That's the problem.
But Rob Bonta and the governor are saying that the federal government isn't providing proof in some of these cases, like most recently the Medicaid fraud, that situation. Yeah. They're waiting on some evidence, some form of communication from HHS. That's just one example.
Yeah, that's just one example. But Rob Bonta says a lot of things. He's also saying that the Paramount Warner Brothers merger is a violation of antitrust law, and it's absolutely not. It's been checked out by the federal government. It's been checked out by the European Union. It's been checked out by so many high value stakeholders throughout the world, throughout the globe. So he says a lot of things. The bottom line is, if he did his job, if Rob Bonta did his job to ensure that California was compliant with all federal law and all federal programs, then California would be getting its money and he wouldn't be suing. He wouldn't need to sue. He's only suing because we're not compliant with federal law. And he's going to realize when these lawsuits come to fruition, when there's an adjudication on the merit, that he's going to lose. Because you cannot violate federal law and then demand your money. It doesn't work like that. The federal government is entitled to issue money when conditions are met. That's the way the system works. And so the fact that Rob Bonta is even able or has a basis to file the 78 lawsuits is because he's not making sure that California is compliant with federal laws.
In terms of you mentioned the antitrust situation, Rob Bonta wants to expand the antitrust enforcement unit in the Department of Justice. What would you do in that space? I mean, he's noting that this is becoming a bigger issue because companies are trying to buy each other in some senses. They're getting bigger, more powerful, leaving consumers with less choices. What would you do in this space?
Well, that's what he says, that there are consumers left with fewer choices. But the reality, that's just not the reality. I mean, if you look at the entertainment industry, especially with streaming and podcasts and everything, every other different forms of types of media, there's actually far more competition now than there ever has been. With the Paramount Warner Brothers merger, that's just pure sheer weaponization for political gain. I mean, it's an election year, so I guess that's why he's doing it now. But there is nothing to it. I actually have experience in antitrust. I had an antitrust case that I litigated myself, both in federal district court and the Ninth Circuit when I was the city attorney of Huntington Beach. I did it on behalf of the city. That's the case that almost went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so I have experience. I know what antitrust looks like, what antitrust violations look like. This is not one of those cases. So when he talks about expanding it, I don't know what his basis or justification is. There's 1,200 attorneys in the California Department of Justice. That's his team, the 1,200 attorneys. He's devoted over 200 attorneys to fight the Trump administration. And now he wants to devote more attorneys to fighting politically charged, weaponized cases. This is a waste of taxpayer money, and it's not good for the taxpayer. It doesn't bring justice to the taxpayer. It's not good for the consumer. What we need to do is take those resources and devote them to fighting crime throughout the state of California and fighting corruption. Imagine if Rob Bonta actually had the right focus, the same focus that everyday Californians want from our leadership in Sacramento, and fought crime and corruption. California would be way better off if Rob Bonta just refocused his priorities on the things that matter to everyday Californians. These weaponized cases against the Trump administration don't matter. It just shows how tone deaf he is. The fact that now he's beating up on big business in California, and now really he's going to be driving Paramount out of California, frankly. And how many big businesses are we going to allow, are the everyday Californians going to allow our Sacramento leaders to drive out of California? I'm hoping that Californians, because of the dissatisfaction with the leadership that we're seeing in Sacramento, that Californians vote for new leadership here so that we, the new leaders that take office in January, that we can turn this stuff around, we can turn the state around, and we can actually get back to the priorities that everyday Californians care about. Lowering crime, lowering corruption, and focusing on the families, focusing on businesses here, and not driving businesses out of California. We've lost an estimated $2 trillion of wealth out of California. That's left California. That's wealthy people and wealthy businesses leaving California over the past couple years because of the policies coming out of Sacramento at the hands of Gavin Newsom and Rob Bonta.
Okay, I have sort of a two-part question on Democrats who are in charge of the state. First, just taking a step back very broadly, has Rob Bonta done anything right? Is there anything you can point to that you could acknowledge he's done well?
Well, he seems to be making headlines often in all of the wrong ways and for the wrong reasons. So it's hard to think of, with all of the headlines in my mind, it's hard to think of anything that I would agree with. He's absent on crime. He was completely absent on the waste, fraud, and abuse and the corruption. The election integrity issues throughout the state of California. He's shutting down the investigation, or trying to shut down the investigation in Riverside at the hands of Sheriff Bianco, who wants to investigate the special election Prop 50. Why would you shut down an investigation there? The Los Angeles election for the mayor's race in the June primary. So the June primary in Los Angeles, why isn't he investigating that? Bill Asaley from the Central District with the Department of Justice, he's already announced an investigation into voter fraud. Okay, well, we don't know how widespread it is. We don't know how regular it was in this election, but that's why you investigate. Why isn't he investigating? So there's a lot of things that Rob Bonta is doing that are making headlines, and I think in a negative way. It's not good for California. And then there's things that he's not doing, like launching investigations where everyday Californians, they want these things investigated. Election integrity needs to be investigated. Crime, like I said, crime needs to be prosecuted. Corruption needs to be investigated and prosecuted. People need to be held accountable. Rob Bonta has, I believe that Newsom put Rob Bonta in office in 2021 by appointment because he knew Rob Bonta would look the other way, that he would cover for corruption, that he would run interference on truth and justice, including criminal justice. That's what we're seeing in Riverside with Sheriff Bianco's investigation into Prop 50 special election. That's what we're seeing in Los Angeles, where Spencer Pratt had a strong second position and then lost a few days later with late counted ballots after Election Day. That's statistically improbable. Now, I'm not saying I know what the answer is or why that happened, but why not investigate? And then if you investigate, or when you investigate, if you find nothing untoward, everything was done according to process and according to law, then you announce to the public that we did an investigation, we did our due diligence, and there was nothing wrong found here. But he doesn't even want to do that. He doesn't even want to do the work that it takes to ensure or increase confidence in the American people in what our government even does in the first place. And so this guy's frankly, I'm just going to put it this way, he's a disaster from top to bottom. He's made a lot of enemies, both with big business and individuals. He has sued school boards because there are school boards that actually want to try to take extra steps to protect their children. Like, he has sued Christian charities. He's sued Catholic hospitals. This guy is like completely off the rails, in my opinion. And as a lawyer and officer of the court, I know that there's a lot of lawsuits that he has filed that I would not have filed. They have no merit to them. And I know, as a responsible leader, as I was in the city of Huntington Beach, as the city attorney, that he has a responsibility. He owes the citizens, he owes his constituents to reduce crime, fight corruption, conduct investigations, particularly into election integrity. These are the things that he should be focused on, but he's not. Why? Because he's covering for corruption. He was put in office by Newsom to be looking the other way on all of these things. And now he's being held accountable. I am going to take him to task in this election. The voters are going to have a clear choice. Either they want to continue with the lawlessness with Rob Bonta, or they're going to elect me, and I'm going to return law and order to the state of California.
In terms of the legislature, which Rob Bonta does have a lot of friends in there, you will need state lawmakers to pass laws. The Attorney General of California has consistently had legislation sponsored and passed. How would you do that in this Democratic majority? Well,
there is a Democratic majority. We will see what the voters do with a lot of the Assembly seats that are up and the Senate seats that are up here in November. So there may be a shift. Because, like I said earlier on in this interview, 65% of respondents say that California is headed in the wrong direction. That means change is coming. That number back in 2022 was in the 40s. So just in the past 4 years, the number has jumped nearly 25 points because Californians are fed up. So I think there's going to be some change in leadership with the Assembly races and with the Senate races, so we will see. But look, when I get elected, I'm going to have a whole portfolio of independent authority that I'm going to have that's given to me by the California Constitution. So I am going to be duty bound to execute on that responsibility that the voters have put me in office to execute on, with or without the legislature. Now, is it going to be nice to have their support? Is it going to be nice to have legislation that helps reduce crime, reduce or increase accountability when it comes to wrongdoers, assist with investigations into corruption, the whole thing? Yes, it would be nice. But I have authority already built into the office pursuant to the California Constitution under Article 5, Section 13. I already have my charging orders, so to speak. And so when the voters put me there, I'm going to get to work on day one. I am not going to have to wait for the legislature or their support. I don't even have to wait for the governor and his support. I do not need permission to do from the governor or the legislature to do anything that I just mentioned. We're going to be Title IX compliant. We're going to be Second Amendment compliant, First Amendment compliant. We're going to be compliant with all federal laws, including immigration and federal elections laws. There's a whole lot of work to be done on day one when I'm the Attorney General, and I am going to make sure that we are, and I'm going to do that work independent of the governor and the legislature.
Yeah, there's a lot of work you want to do. So
Yeah.
day one, what is the very first action you would take if elected?
So I have said this before on the campaign trail, the very first thing I'm going to do, so you may know that Rob Bonta recently, and again, I think it's because it's an election year, recently sued a number of hospitals, including a children's hospital, to force them, these hospitals, to perform trans surgeries on minors, on small children. On day one, I'm going to dismiss those lawsuits. We are going to protect children. We're going to protect children from child mutilation. We're going to protect young girls in their sports and education by getting boys out of girls' sports and young men out of young women's locker rooms. We're going to be Title IX compliant up and down the state of California, because it's up to the top law enforcement officer in the state of California to ensure that all of our state agencies, including education and sports programs, are compliant with federal law. Title IX is a federal law. That is not a jump ball. That is not multiple choice or optional. It's not up for grabs. It literally is a mandate by the federal government. It's up to the state to become compliant with federal law. It's up to the Attorney General to ensure that compliance. And so on day one, I'm going to protect our kids on day one with that first action. Although I have a long list of other day one items that I'm going to do, that's the very first one.
Okay, so it has been nearly 2 decades since California voters elected a Republican to statewide office. What do you say to voters, really specifically Democrats and no party preference voters, who see that R in your name and might have a pause?
Well, a couple things. The public sentiment is already there for change. I mentioned the 65% repeatedly. 65% of Californians think that California's headed in the wrong direction. That's a perfect starting point, right? The other thing is, the things that I'm talking about on the campaign trail are kitchen table issues. Everybody in California is concerned about crime. Everybody in California is concerned about the high crime rates and the violence on the streets. And that's what I'm talking about, enforcing the law and making their community safe again. They're concerned about the waste, fraud, and abuse, the corruption. They can't believe that it's ballooned to the hundreds of billions of dollars. I'm talking about actually fighting it and holding people accountable, where Rob Bonta for the past 5 years has not. I'm talking about protecting our young girls in sports and education. That's what the majority of Californians want. They do not want boys in little girls' sports. They do not want young men in young women's locker rooms. The vast majority of Californians, including NPPs and independents, and even Democrats, they do not want this to happen in our school and education programs. They want some adult in the room to step up and actually make things right and actually make us Title IX compliant, for instance. When it comes to things like, the Stop Nick Shirley Act, that's another perfect example. Rob Bonta's wife, Mia Bonta, was the sponsor of that bill through the legislature. That's an attack, as you know, on First Amendment rights.
Not quite. I've sat down with Assemblymember Mia Bonta about this. Her intent is not to prevent Nick Shirley for doing his job, from journalists doing their jobs. I understand there are First Amendment concerns about the wording, but this was not created to stop Nick Shirley.
Well, it doesn't matter what her intent is. It matters what the words are. And you said that there are words that suggest a concern with First Amendment. That's what I'm talking about. It's the legislation that I'm concerned about, not what she thought about leading up to the legislation. The legislation speaks for itself. It is a violation of the First Amendment. I'm going to tell you right now, on day one, if the Stop Nick Shirley Act is law, I'm not enforcing it. I'm going to use my prosecutorial discretion to not enforce the Stop Nick Shirley Act, because I am not going to use an errant and unconstitutional piece of legislation to violate the First Amendment rights of everyday Californians. So it will not be enforced. So you may agree with Mia Bonta about her intent. That's fine. But the words of the legislation itself, the text of the legislation itself, is a violation of the First Amendment, and I am not going to enforce it.
We'll see if it even gets passed.
Well, we will see, but it's breaking news here first. I will not enforce it. It will not be enforced on day one. I absolutely will not enforce the Stop Nick Shirley Act, because doing so will necessarily violate people's First Amendment rights. And I don't have to do that. There's federal law preempts, constitutional rights preempt. The legislature cannot take those away from Californians.
Is there anything else you think we should know about your campaign and your run for Attorney General?
Well, I'm not a career politician or a professional politician or a career politician. I am an everyday Californian. I have been blessed with an incredible legal career, incredible legal experiences in the field, blessed with a fantastic family. Like I said, a wife of almost 30 years, 5 kids and 4 grandkids. I see this as an opportunity to rescue California. We are headed down the wrong path, and I believe that it's going to be up to everyday Californians like myself and like the voters to rescue California. So when the folks put me in office, they are going to have a real leader who is going to reduce crime, fight the corruption and hold people accountable, send them to prison, and actually get the money back, claw back the money and return the money to the taxpayers. And I'm going to be fighting for their constitutional rights. Like I said, the Stop Nick Shirley Act is dead on day one. Nobody can force me to enforce that law that violates federal constitutional rights. And that goes for the Second Amendment. You know, every sheriff, every one of my 58 sheriffs throughout the state of California on day one is going to be on notice from me that if they are not issuing CCWs or concealed carry weapons permits within 90 days of application, they're in violation of the Second Amendment. I am going to be fighting for the folks, everyday Californians. We're going to return to law and order in the state of California. And if people only remember me for one thing when I leave office, I want them to remember he returned California to a law and order state. Now, whatever that means, fine, but I want California to be back to a law and order state. We are lawless right now, and it's got to come to an end.
All right, Michael Gates, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.